Hey there, Mrs. Fisk here. I'm in my home in Middle Grove, down in the basement, and I'm coming to you into your world, into your room. I'd like to teach you about a Japanese artist today. She's a contemporary artist. She is 91 years old. She is still living and working. This time she's living in Japan, but she has lived in New York City and traveled throughout the United States. This is a photograph of her. Her name is Yayoi Kusama. In Japanese, the Japanese usually use their last name first and then their first name. So if you were in Japan, you would call her Kusama Yayoi. She loves dots. Pretty good looking woman for 91. Love her red wig. Great inspiration for my next year Halloween costume, dressing up as her. It'd be a lot of fun because I like dots, and look at that red hair. Get to wear some hot red lipstick too. I'd like to read you a story. It's called Yayoi Kusama. Covered everything in dots and wasn't sorry. When I look at the drawing of her on the front, it kind of reminds me from The Incredibles. She kind of reminds me of Edna Mode. Any of you that are familiar with The Incredibles know who I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and rearrange my camera so I can go ahead and read you this story. And this will hopefully answer any questions about the artist. Yayoi Kusama covered everything in dots and wasn't sorry. Yayoi Kusama dreamed of becoming a famous artist. Day and night she painted hundreds and hundreds of dots onto large canvases. The dots soon came off her pictures and ended up on her dresses, tables, and walls. She wasn't sorry. An inspiring story about one of the most popular contemporary artists in the world. See a little picture of her down here? My name is Yayoi. I am an artist, and I'd like to tell you my story. I was born in, you're going to have to forgive me, Japanese words are a little bit more difficult, Matsumoto, a historic city in Japan with a beautiful castle. I have always loved drawing more than anything else in the world. When I was a little girl, I carried a sketchbook with me wherever I went. I drew everything I saw. I would sit in the meadows between the flowers and plants and see things around me that other people didn't. I rushed to draw them in my sketchbook before they disappeared. I used to dream of becoming a famous artist. I longed to fly away to other countries where artists were doing exciting new things. So when I grew up, I decided to leave Japan. My mother didn't want me to go, but I was determined to make my dreams come true. I got on a plane and flew to America. I arrived with a suitcase full of my drawings and some money I had hidden in my shoes. But soon that money ran out. With nothing left to buy food, I went to the market to pick up scraps. I would find fish heads and cabbage leaves that had been thrown away, which I used to make soup. At least it was something. I lived on my own in an apartment where I painted day and night. I painted hundreds and hundreds of dots on large canvases. The dots often came off my pictures and ended up on my dresses, table, and walls. But I wasn't sorry. Each dot was a part of thousands of others. They made me feel like a single dot was part of an infinite universe. I was making lots of paintings, but I was poor, and I was alone. One day, an elegant lady came knocking on my door. Her name was Georgia O'Keeffe. She was a famous American painter. I had written her a letter asking her for some advice on how to become a successful artist. She wanted to know how I was and offered to sell my artwork. She introduced me to her art dealer, who immediately bought one of my paintings. Wow, I continued to paint a lot of pictures, and soon I was ready to put on my first solo exhibition in New York City. It was a success. I had more and more exhibitions and more ideas for new works. I made soft cushion shaped, which I used to fill rooms, boats and shoes and cover couches, armchairs and hats. I covered bags and dresses with dried pasta and filled rooms with glittering balls and lights. I created mirror rooms which reflected everything over and over again. I also organized performances that I called happenings, where I covered people's bodies with dots. It was a pretty daring thing to do at the time. My art was starting to get noticed and written about in the newspaper, so I decided to change the world for the better. I organized a happening on the streets of New York to protest against the war in Vietnam. I covered lots of men and women in dots, and they handed out leaflets with a message of freedom and peace. But it didn't last long because the police came and they arrested me. As soon as I was released, I started working even harder than before. I held other happenings. I made films. I published a newspaper. I created unusual party dresses. Some had big holes cut out of them, and others were made for two people to wear together. I even made a huge dress that could be worn by as many as 25 people at the same time. I love creating all this new experimental art, but there came a time I had to stop because I became unwell. I left New York and went back to Japan to get better. Back at home, I saw the beautiful mountains and the cherry trees in bloom. But a lot of things had changed since I'd left. The meadows and streams that used to inspire me to draw had been built over, and the cities were filled with smog. This made me sad. Then one day it snowed. The snow covered everything and transformed the landscape, turning it into something pure and beautiful, just how I remembered it from when I was a little girl. I found a studio near the hospital I was staying in and started working. Creating art made me feel better. I also began writing. I would paint during the day and write at night. Although I miss New York, I decided to stay in Japan. It's where I still live today, and I still work non-stop, making paintings, writing books, and designing clothes and other objects. The other thing I love to make is pumpkins. I've always loved pumpkins, with their beautiful shape and sweetness. I want to show all the love I feel for them through my art. I also like to cover them in, you guessed it, dots. You won't believe it, but I picked up a pumpkin when I was a child, and it talked to me. My artworks have become really famous, and you can see them in many different art galleries and museums around the world. My dream has come true. I'm just going to read you this little more about Yayoi Kusama. Kusama is one of the world's most celebrated living artists. She was born in Matsumoto, Japan in 1929. From an early age, Kusama loved drawing. She drew what she saw around her and what she imagined, which was often repeated patterns of dots. Although Kusama studied traditional Japanese painting, she wanted to express herself through art like no one else before. In 1958, she moved to New York and started creating huge paintings filled with tiny, intricate dots, which she called infinity nets. Kusama went on to create her incredible infinity rooms, where the works were reflected endlessly by rooms of mirrored walls, ceilings, and floors. She also organized a series of performance art events known as happenings, where she painted people's bodies with bright polka dots. She used these happenings to protest against political events such as the Vietnam War. Kusama's art was unusual, daring, and exciting, challenging people's understanding of the world and themselves. In 1973, Yayoi moved back to Japan, where she still lives and works. She is recognized as one of the most popular contemporary artists today, and her art continues to be exhibited and inspire people all over the world. The end. Here's a picture of her, one of her infinity rooms with her polka-dotted pumpkins. We traveled to Montreal and we went to a museum and we saw one of her infinity rooms. It was something I'll never forget. If you give me a couple minutes, I will get back to you and we will go ahead and talk about the lesson. This is a photograph of one of the infinity rooms, maybe not the exact one I saw in Canada, but when we went to the museum, we had to sign up for a time, and we were allowed so many people in the infinity room at a time, and we were allowed so many minutes in the infinity room. I think we were allowed about 5 to 7 minutes. 1 minute? Oh, my daughter's correcting me and telling me that it was only a minute. I could have went back over and over to see this room. It was these spheres that were mirrors, and everything was reflected inside the mirrors. It was unbelievable. Here is another one of hers. I would love to walk in this infinity room. It looks like these big coils with all these dots on them. And here's just another one of her, just one that's just filled with dots. Today, I want you to go ahead and what you'll need for materials is you need some kind of paper. It could be colored paper. It doesn't have to be white. And you're probably going to use pencil, but I'm going to use marker. Sharpie's my favorite. I got a regular tip marker, black Sharpie, and a fine tip Sharpie. I'm just going to go ahead and brainstorm for a minute. What do I want to draw? I'm just going to draw some shapes. I'm going to do a circle. And if you want to get some perfect circles, you could just go ahead and get a cup to trace, a plate to trace, anything that is already circular shape. If you want to use a ruler, you can. I'm not going to use any of that. I'm just going to go ahead and make some shapes. I'm going to do all circles. So I have some overlapping here. And another one. So it's not a full circle. It looks like that one's underneath. I'll maybe add some smaller ones. Circle ends and begins at the same place. Maybe I'm going to name this Circles Galore, Circles Triumph, Circles Lead the Way. I don't know. Inside each one of these circles, I'm going to draw circles. Maybe in this one, I'm going to color them all in. Maybe I'll go to this one and leave them uncolored and make them all about the same size. That one looks like it's going off the page. I am going to be a circle expert by the time I am done. Maybe in this one I'm going to do a circle inside it. And they're going to be varying shapes. This one I'm not going to let any of them overlap. Just want you to have fun, kind of focus on your drawing, just focus on what you're doing right now. You can listen to some music as you draw. A lot of times I like to have the TV on. I just like to listen to the sound. I'll put on one of my favorite movies, maybe Harry Potter, and I just listen to it in the background. Every once in a while, if the Dementors come up or whatever, I might look to the screen. But I just like to have a little bit of noise when I draw or when I create art. Keep on going on this one. I must like doing this one. Maybe these are going to be solid, but I've decided on mine. I'm going to make it all in honor of Kusama, and I'm going to make it all circles. Like I said, this one's going to be all solids. Maybe you're just going to do it in black and white. Maybe you're going to use 2 colors. She likes red a lot. Maybe you're going to do red and purple. Maybe you're going to do the 3 primary colors. Maybe red, yellow, and blue. Maybe you're going to use the secondary colors and do purple, green, and orange. It's up to you. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to go ahead and pretend like I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and sign my name, and just so I can remember when I made it, I'm going to go ahead and put the date on there too. I hope you enjoy this lesson. Go ahead and do what moves you, and go ahead and think about what Yayoi Kusama would draw. Hope you enjoy this. I'll see you later. Thanks. Bye from the basement.